Good morning, everyone. It is Brigid from the Art of Grace Publishing House, and I'm here today with another edition of Authors in the Spotlight, along with MyTimeTV.live and our beautiful producer, Adaire, in the background. Today we will be talking about stories that are hard to speak about again. Hear Her Roar is a collection of women who have experienced domestic abuse and are sharing their stories in the intention to allow others to change their current circumstances. You know, our desire is that a woman may read this book and actually leave one time sooner than she may have done if she hadn't have read the stories within these pages. The women who are here today, it's a brave thing to share a story about domestic abuse, and it's something that I applaud these women for, and I'm so grateful that they have shared it. We have put our book, Hear Her Roar, into several places, including into places that support women who are experienced domestic abuse and have left those situations. And we continue to do that. As we sell copies, I am donating more to these facilities. So it is a beautiful gift to the world, and I'm so grateful to be able to do this. If you pop on over to Amazon today, you can actually purchase the book. Both the ebook and the paperback are out, and you can grab them from the link that we will display for you. Come and watch us over on Amazon TV and support us over there, and follow Adaire so you can get notifications of when her shows are on and when we are doing Authors in the Spotlight. So firstly, I would like to welcome to join me in her mobile office, Kristin Strawder. And I wanted to, hey Kristin, thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
It is absolutely my pleasure. I wanted to share with everybody Kristin's actual bio before we begin. Her passion is to empower women to embrace their divine mission by embodying their spiritual gifts. As Kristin emerged from the darkest days of her own healing journey, she returned with a greater understanding of herself and her own divine mission. Kristin guides mum on a path of self-transformation by honouring their experiences and lighting the way for them to implement and integrate their own feminine magic while healing their inner child. Kristin is a mama to a spirited special needs toddler, intuitive energy healer, international best-selling author, a TBRI practitioner, an EFT guide, a speaker, a trauma trainer, mumpreneur, and a TEDx speaker. Thank you so much for joining us, Kristin. I must say, the time that I saw your TEDx talk, I was, brought to tears from what you shared in that presentation. What I didn't know until later was that you were actually in the midst of this trauma that you share in Hear Her Roar. Can you share with everybody what it was like to actually be there?
Being in the moment, taking the stage, you mean?
Yeah, and being in that moment, taking the stage. And I've heard you talk about, he wanted to be there, and you were like, no, you're not being here. This is my moment. What was that like for you?
It was very surreal. It took a lot of energy work, a lot of working through my own monkey mind, as I like to call it, as far as you're a fraud. How can you take the stage and help other people heal their traumas when your house is, crumbling around you? And when I say house, I mean the whole essence of, what is home, what is love, what is safety, that whole existence of behind closed doors. And when I took the stage, it was really about, I don't know if I'm ready to share my story, but I know I can empower others to heal their stories. Because I was working with clients every day at that point, and coming home and trying to survive an unimaginable situation that was very covert, very mind battling type of things. And when I took that stage, I just thought, if I don't speak, I will always be silent. And like you mentioned, he wanted to be there. He made me cry over my pasta later that night. And I remember just being in that moment thinking my voice has been heard and it's just the beginning. And that really was a catalyst to me really standing up and saying, I'm not doing this anymore. It's escalating, it's traumatizing, and I have to practice what I preach. Like, I knew all the signs, I knew all the skills, I knew everything, but I had been led to believe that my life would be not the same if I spoke out. And that TEDx journey was part of that process of standing up, speaking out, saying enough, and moving forward in my healing journey.
One of the things that you talk about is healing the energetic wounds. Can you share with the listeners what that meant for you?
For me, I come through a long line of helpers and healers and people who are helping humanity be better, grow together, heal, transform. And when you look at yourself as a person, you have your emotions and your thoughts and your feelings and who you are and the patterns that you embody. But on a subconscious level, there are your patterns, your environment, your family patterns and traumas and dramas. And when you're coming from an emotional, energetic perspective, there's things that go back many, many, many years, especially when it's connected to your inner child. And even though you may be 40, 50, 60 years old, at whatever age your inner child had the most trauma, that is really the coping skills and the age that is kind of running the show in the background. So it really is an energetic and emotional healing process where you can go back and process the traumatic experiences without having to relive it, without having to rehash it every hour for 5 years. Energetic and emotional healing gets down to the underlying root cause of the triggers and the patterns and limiting beliefs that are holding you stuck in that pattern of trauma or drama or withdrawal or disconnect.
And it's really important that we, try not to rehash these things, because it can trigger you and bring things up, which may happen today for some of you. If you get triggered by things we talk about, please do reach out for help to someone that you trust. And if you feel that one of the speakers today actually resonates with you, reach out to them. And it's something that, the Hear Her Raw book has encouraged, is that you're not alone in this journey, and there is always somebody who can help you. So if it's not the person you reach out to within the book, they may be able to refer you on to somebody who can. Kristen, you talk about beginning to feel safe again, beginning to feel safe in your own body, in your own life. It's something that a lot of women who actually go through domestic abuse struggle with. Can you share with the listeners a little bit about how you came to feel safe again?
For me, it was coming back to my own essence and really evaluating, is my response to this situation coming from trauma or trust? Is this a wound or a wisdom thing? Is it that gut reaction in our intuition that there's an issue, or is it my solar plexus is still holding on to those traumatic energetic experiences when I was feeling unsafe? With our fight or flight, we're constantly in this red alert for years. It took me years to be able to hear or see or experience somebody even have a raised voice or have a physical expression towards their anger, and it would make me completely tense up inside. And I had to come to a point where I had to literally have an inner dialogue with myself. I'm safe, they're just expressing, it's not going to go any further. And it was like this, I had to reparent myself in a way. Like, I grew up in a home where there wasn't domestic violence, there wasn't a lot of aggression, and I had a pretty good, decent childhood, overall. Everyone comes away from that experience with either a lot of trauma or moderate trauma. So a lot of my what I call felt safety, and that's where you can be in a situation where you don't feel safe, but you really are safe. And so it's when you embody that I'm safe and I'm truly safe and everything around me is safe, or I know I'm unsafe, but I'm still okay, and being able to have your wits about you and still be able to navigate that situation so you can get to safety, so you can de-escalate the situation or, flat out leave. So there were moments, in the middle of how long is this going to last? How escalated is this going to be? Who do I need to protect? Where do I need to go? I mean, it was years before I didn't look at all the exit strategies, who was doing what, where, when, who was happy, who was not, what their body language was. And as an intuitive and a highly sensitive person anyway to the unspoken things of the energetics of the world, I was constantly on red alert. I mean, just the other day, even though I've done a ton of healing, something triggered me and I was like, okay, I gotta take a breather. I'm safe. I can work through this. I'm not really in an unsafe situation, but I had a trigger the other day and I had to work through it. And I did, some energy work on myself and, mindset work. And I worked through it and it was over and done with. And I was like, yeah, I'm proud of myself, preaching to the choir over here.
So tell me, how many years has it been? Because I think that's something that, somebody who hasn't been through domestic abuse can't understand this part of it. So how many years has it been?
Yeah, it was on and off intermittently through a 12-and-a-half-year marriage. And that marriage began truly crumbling in 2015. And it really wasn't until 2018 that I was able to really get my wits about myself and understand that this really isn't going to get better. And then, had I known what I know now, I would have never gone back. But it took me a total of 4 years and 3 attempts before I really was able to say, I'm not doing this. I have to feel safe and be safe. I have to protect my little one. And we actually finalized in 2020. So it really hasn't been that long. But the exit part of this is really effed up, I have to get out of this, was a process of about 4 years.
Yeah. And I think that, the triggers and the maintaining your self-worth goes on for many, many years to come.
Mm-hmm. And I would love to point out the fact that I've never really struggled with self-esteem issues or really thought that I couldn't do better or be better or have a better life existence or whatever. It truly was more about, this is not a great situation, but I made a vow and I'm going to see it through and make it work. And I had to come to a point with myself that I was in an abusive marriage and it wasn't going to get better. And even though I had good self-esteem and I loved myself and was doing things to try to self-care and work through that, it still wasn't going to work with the dynamics that we were working with, because there wasn't enough safety and there wasn't enough emotional stability there for me to say, this is a healthy environment that I want to raise my daughter in. So it's not necessarily just the woman who can't see herself without that other person and, doesn't have a lot going for them. It can be the professional woman in the next cubicle or the CEO. You just never know. I mean, I was a social worker for many years. I knew what to say. I knew what to do. I knew what not to say. And I hid a lot of that behind the scenes, emotional and mental and verbal abuse. As a professional, I was helping people get out of those situations all the time. And protecting children from those situations. So it's not necessarily just going to be the one who has no way out. For me, it was enough was enough. And I had to come to terms with the fact that I was going to have to get a divorce. And that was the only way that I could begin to rebuild my life. And even though that's not what I truly wanted, it was really the best option. And I'm so grateful for that.
Kristen, you raised there that, you felt obliged to stay in your marriage because of your beliefs. And I think that a lot of women have judgment on themselves because of that, and they hide what's going on to protect themselves more so than to protect others. And then they have judgment that they are acting fraudulently because they've got this one persona in public and this other at home. And I want you to share with people why it's important to let go of that judgment of yourself?
There was a point where I wasn't sure whether I was going to make it out alive. And that afternoon, before everything kind of really hit the fan that last night, I really wrestled with the fact, am I making the right decision to leave? Like, I had literally spent almost a half a year evaluating what's the best thing to do, what to do. We had separated. We were thriving again. In the middle of that, I had done the TED Talk. You know, crying over the pasta in public is not the way to go to celebrate a amazing thing as a TEDx talk. And I remember thinking that afternoon, something has to change. Like, I can't continue living like a prisoner in my own home, knowing when the door closes, I have a completely different beast I have to deal with. Yeah. And, you know, that charm and that public Casanova comes out, and you begin to think, like, am I the problem? Am I the one who, you know, pushing buttons or toxic or whatever? And then the victim shaming comes in. Like, it was traumatic enough as it was, because I was trying to protect my existence and try to survive a situation that no one really knew about. But I had to come to terms with the fact that my marriage was over. The covenant had already been broken because of the lack of trust and the lack, or the amount of abuse and the lack of trust. And I came to terms with that. I also reached out to some religious leaders that had been convinced that I just needed to go home. And so not only did I not have the support I felt like I needed from my religious community, but it was one particular family member that I thought had my back, and that person ended up completely making the situation so much more traumatic than what it needed to be. On the other hand, I had another family member who gave me a safe place, and without that person, I would have been in a shelter, because it was that type of situation. I was out in the middle of nowhere with barely any resources, a phone that had been trashed, a vehicle that couldn't get me to safety, and I left with 5 diapers and my child that night, and it was either head to the local town or head south. And without that family member, that would not have happened, and I would have been one of those ones knocking on a door late at night saying, I need a place to stay.
I want to share, thank you so much for sharing that with us, because it is important that others know that it's this whole feeling of you're alone in this and you're not. Reach out and ask for help. So I want to share with you some of the comments that are coming through. I was looking down a little bit because my Amazon link dropped out and I logged back in. So over on Amazon, we've got comments that include, these stories are so powerful. Thank you for sharing, Kristen. If you or anyone you know has experienced any form of DV, please give them this book. So many inspirational stories that you can take with you as you move forward. You are not alone. And then I wonder how many others have felt like they have to stay in an abusive marriage, even though they know what to say and do. And that's a very valid point, isn't it? There's so many that do that.
Yes.
And, yeah.
You know, after the fact, I realized that this kind of thing happens all the time, and it's the mind effery that happens, and the programming that if you leave or if you talk or if you say anything, I will make it horrible for you. I stayed a long time based on what I was made to think would happen, and some of those things did happen. But I am so grateful for leaning into my intuition and hearing my angel that night say, leave now. Leave now. Those were the 2 words that I had been searching for. It was very surreal. It was almost like, okay, you're done. Now get out. Like, I had kept trying to justify, to work through. It's just anger. It's just a little bit of abuse. I justified for so long. And when I heard leave now, it was like that, or you'll be sorry, in my mind, it was like this dialogue, but it was as if somebody yelled at me, leave now. It was a warning. It was, and at that point I was still going to stay. And if for whatever reason, because it always blew over, it just, a lot of things didn't survive when it got really bad.
Yeah.
And yeah, so
I really admire your courage, because it takes so much courage. Watching my mum go through this was an ordeal that took me years to get over, and her many more. And it's something that you can't imagine can happen to another person from somebody who is meant to love them. So, I admire your courage. I do want to read, if it's okay with you, I want to read the poem that you have in your chapter.
Absolutely. It would be an honor.
And then I would like you to share the information about that poem. So after I read it, you can share how this came to you and how it came to be and who it is from. In the wilderness, the silence is deafening. The cries are silent. The wilderness hides my screams and pleas. My soul has been taken. My comforts have been stripped away. My spirit has been beaten with no marks to prove. Triangulation, manipulation, contemplation. Will someone hear my tormented cries? Will someone see the signs? Will someone help me, even when I deny? My truth is suppressed by my reactions. My truth is silenced by what I am becoming. My truth is screaming for me to hear my own pleas. This won't get better. This wilderness is here to consume me. This darkness will blanket me as I give my last breath. My essence is lost and broken. My essence is morphing to survive. My essence craves for peace. Just give me peace. I am separated. I am silenced. I am sad. I pretend to be okay. I thought I was going to get a glimpse of heaven in the wilderness. A journey through hell is what I received instead. The wilderness was my promised land that I barely got to see. Empty promises of paradise to see, empty promises of how life will be, empty promises because of my need to flee. Smoke screens and mirrors, secret lies to be seen. Secretly begging for someone to see my silent screams. So many miles, it never stops. So many lies, it never stops. So many calculated scenes, it never stops. The charm, the charisma, the chase, the thrill of freedom, the thrill of fun, the thrill of finding peace. I seek peace. I need peace. I crave peace. I wandered to the wilderness seeking peace. I wandered through the wilderness seeking peace. I wandered by the waters of the wilderness seeking peace. I was never supposed to be this way. I was never supposed to look this way. I was never supposed to end this way. I thought I could survive in the wilderness. I thought I could thrive in the wilderness. I thought I could just be enough in the wilderness. My youth was fleeting. My voice was bleating. My heart was beating. I tried to be enough, though I was already enough. I tried to be worthy, though I was already worthy. I tried to be authentic, though I was hiding in plain sight. Sadly, the mindfuckery still exists in the wilderness. The demons still exist in the wilderness. The lies still exist in the wilderness. I will forever now be part of the wilderness. I will forever now be part of the story of untamed wilderness. I will forever now be a part of the skies of the wilderness. I will not be silenced anymore. I will not be held back from speaking my truth anymore. I will not be invisible anymore. My voice will be heard. My story will be heard. My cries will be heard. I am now heard. I gained my voice. I gained my truth. I gained my freedom in the wilderness.
I know, right?
I know. Every time I read it, it gets me, and I want you to share. Yeah, it's really hard to understand what she went through, and reading that, it gives you an insight into what she went through. And I want you to share with everyone who this is from, who this is for. And, you know, I mean, it's not only just for her. She shared this gift with you for everyone. So I want you to share that.
Okay. This poem was gifted to me by Gabby Petito. And there were parts that you were reading, and I was taken back to moments of my own story. Mm. And I just I've only heard it read a couple of times, and the emotion that it just brings up within me, and the way I write, this poem just flowed like it was literally being given to me. I wrote it down, and I was like, I'm not changing anything. And normally when I write, you know, I analyze everything. I chew on it. I rewrite it. It's never seems like it's, the final version. And I literally, the day after they had made an announcement that she was missing and that they had found somebody possibly being her, I took my little one to school. I got a piece of paper, and it came out, and I think it truly embraces the inner struggle and the fears and the terrors of someone who is hiding in plain sight, trying to be somebody who's light, facing the darkness by themselves every day.
Mm. Yeah.
And I think all of us can have a piece of Gabby Petito's story found in our own journeys.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Gabby gave me that, and I feel honored that her memory can be honored through my words. I mean, that's such a gift in of itself. And I'm so honored that you read it tonight. So thank you.
Yeah, my honor. I mean, when you sent it to me, I was like, oh gosh, I hope she puts that in the book. And it's something that I can't explain, but I feel her through those words. And, this is a woman I've never met. And it's this channeling writing that people can do. I've never experienced, but this piece of work is Gabby's. And, I'm so grateful that it got to be in Hear Her Roar, and that everybody gets to have that from her and know in a different way how it felt. Because, that there is those times when you think, oh, if we just do this, it's going to be better. If we have more fun, it's going to be better. But the fun turns into the lies, that charisma comes out and says, let's go do this and it's going to be awesome. And then you get there, or even on the way to there, it's the same as it is at home. There's no escape from it. And, leaving is the only option. And, Gabby didn't get that chance. And we hope that this book and her words and Kristen's words and all those in the book inspire other women to do the same. Kristen, we will put the links for people to contact you, but can you just share with everybody, as a last thing, what is it that you would like them to do if they are in a domestic abuse situation?
Don't wait until it's too late, and reach out to somebody that can help you do what you need to do to be safe. My website, Healing Home Coaching, has some resources on there. I would love to talk to anyone that wants to share their story with me. And I help moms calm the chaos within themselves, with their mom triggers, with their inner child, and that results completely in more peace in the home, more connection with your kids, because DA is a intergenerational, multi-generational thing, and just because you leave doesn't mean there's not work to be done on an emotional and energetic level. And I am so proud of every person that has exited the situation, because like Gabby, we're not always so lucky. She wasn't one of the lucky ones in that aspect, but her voice lives on. And I think we need to honor those who've come before us and ourselves for honoring our experiences, and then helping others not have to be in their situation any longer than they have to be.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being here today, Kristen. I just want to share with you that the comments in regards to the poem were, wow, powerful stuff, and such a powerful poem for Gabby. Thanks for being with us. Chris Williams, who is watching at home, not feeling so well. She was going to be on the show today, but Chris, she gave us the opportunity to actually fit the poem in, so thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate your time, Kristen. Talk to you again soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks.
As I said at the beginning, this is really hard stuff to talk about, and it's not a subject that I take lightly. If you do have issues with domestic abuse at home, domestic violence, please do reach out to somebody, whether it be me, whether it be the local police station, whether it be a friend. Please do reach out to somebody, ask for help, and you will be able to move through this process and get yourself to the other side much quicker. I would like to welcome Carly J to join me. She also shared her story in this book, and I'm just bringing up her bio. Thanks for joining me, Carly.
Thank you.
It's that poem gets me every time.
Yep.
Still taking deep breaths from that one. Carly has lived with a life of abuse and trauma in her childhood. Carly J fell into a state of addiction and repeating the cycles of abuse she saw before her. She found her way out of all that by saying enough was enough and creating herself a different life. Now, Carly J has 5 children, a loving husband, and is living a passion-filled life by healing and learning how to shift her world. Carly J coaches women to take their power back, clearing the anger and fear that has restricted them in life, showing them to break free and claim their permission to shine again. And Carly, you have moved into a new way of working with people. Can you share that with everyone?
Yeah, so when I first started doing this, I was more like a guide. I wouldn't have a proper word for it, but now I do full-on rediscovery and recovery work, which is like, it's funny that I'm after Kristen because it's about the inner child work, looking at the inner woundings of the inner princess, as I say, which finds that inner child that's been wounded and reparenting that space. I help women to find out how to reparent and parent themselves, because quite often you don't know how to parent in general because you haven't had that modeling to start with. So yeah, and then from
there, that is so true.
Yeah,
you put a quote in your chapter which was an indication of where you were heading with your work, even though you didn't know it at the time. The quote is from Sushma Jakar. Is that how I say it?
I think so. I can't pronounce it.
It says, children hear everything you say and they mimic everything you do. So choose your words and actions carefully. This really resonated for you, didn't it? Because you had a father who acted inappropriately, to put it nicely, towards his child. Would you like to share what it was like growing up in that situation?
So to start with, in the beginning, I never noticed it till I was about 5 or 6. I wasn't fully aware. It wasn't prevalent in my face. And then hitting that point where like I was consciously aware of what was going on around me. There was always a fear in my life that I couldn't shake. And I have clear memories of not just being afraid of my father anymore, but any male that came near me from that age onwards. Anytime there was a male that came near me, I had this inbuilt fear that something was going to happen, that there was going to be a bad, like a negative thing happen from him just being near me. And it came like I was watching my father basically every day after a while, either physically, emotionally, verbally abuse my my mother, my nana, or me, depending on how his mood was. And that stayed with me all of my life while I was living under the roof with him.
Yeah. And then you go on to talk about becoming the one to experience too. I want to just read a little bit from your chapter. At 16, I had my first true boyfriend, a long-distance one at that. I latched onto the first person who gave me the attention, the first person who was a male that showed that they loved me. Turns out I chose wrong. He never would hit me, which I just said made it okay. The mental abuse that he put me through, the twisted up stories and the suicidal pieces. I couldn't break up with him or he would die. He would make sure I messaged at specific times, and if I didn't, wow, would I be shown how truly useless I was. How much of a problem I was. By 17, I had been kicked out of home, scared for my life. I went into a women's refuge, and there I felt empowered enough to break up with my first boyfriend. To me, imagining that 17-year-old girl not having any role models and ending up in a women's refuge, how did you find the courage to let go of that boyfriend?
It was only because there was other women in there. It was the other women and their stories that made me go, wow, I need to stop this right now. I can't keep doing this. I had someone in there who had been with her partner from the age that I was, and she was at that stage, I think she was 30. So it was 13 years, and it started in the same sort of way. And now she was there with 3 kids, and she was feeling that afraid of life because she couldn't even leave the refuge at that stage for this man that was trying to hunt her down.
And it's very common that the pattern repeats, isn't it?
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
And that's what you work with now, is women to try and stop that repeating pattern.
Yeah, with that and with addiction itself, because by that stage I started using very young to numb out the pain and to be able to cope with my mother, who was also hurting so much, and in her hurt she'd lash out as well. So I was getting it from dad when he was around, and then mum when he wasn't, because she didn't know any other way herself. And so I started using, and so now I work with people who are addicts, previous addicts, that are still trying to work through it because of the emotional pain and abuse and trauma stories that are still sitting there.
Yeah, and it never ends, does it? It's like it comes back and triggers can come up and situations occur where you think that you could go back to it, and it's not an easy way to live, is it?
No, it's definitely not easy. Like the amount of courage it takes to say there's a problem, that's just the first step. After you put down whatever it is that's creating an issue, whether that be a relationship, whether that be drugs, whether that be any materialistic item, there's so much work to do after that to heal that soul that's been torn apart by the pain.
I want to encourage everybody to jump on over to Amazon Live TV. The link is in the comments. You just can scroll back through our comments and you'll see the link to the Amazon Live TV show on Facebook, and pop over there and grab a copy of the Hear Her Raw book, which is a collection of stories from women who have experienced domestic abuse. I want you to know that you are not alone, and should you need assistance, to reach out to one of the authors or to reach out to a organisation in your area. You know, it's quite easy to find them. If you can't use a computer at home or you can't use your telephone, go to the local library at some point and search it on there. Talk to the librarian. They will be able to help you. It's something that you cannot go through alone, and we don't want you to be stuck in that situation. So do reach out. Carly, throughout your writing, like you have done 4 books now, is that right?
Yeah.
And throughout your writing, you are probably the most honest person I have met, as in even in your social media posts, there's no hiding with Carly J. I don't know if you were like that when you did your first piece, but do you feel like now you truly own who you are?
Yeah, like you bring up if I did it in my first piece, and I definitely didn't. I hid so much in there and gave just enough that I thought would impact someone. And there should have been so much more in there that would have been more realistic and more authentic to what was actually going on.
Yeah.
But at that time, I couldn't face it myself. So by writing and continuing to do this, it's allowed that to blossom and grow and be able to be here going, hey, here's my stuff. Take it whether you like it or not. And yeah,
well, the right people show up then, don't they? The people who need to see you, the people who need to work with you, the people who need to know that they're not alone because they've been through something similar as you did. I think that that's why it's important to get so vulnerable and share like that.
Yeah, definitely.
I want everybody to follow Carly J. I've said this before when I've interviewed you, we are totally different. Totally different in every single way. And I have so much respect for the work that this woman does and the way that she presents herself. It's like, I'm in awe of you, Carly J. It's amazing how much you've suffered, and you now are out in the world helping other people do this. At the same time, you unschool 5 children. Like, it's incredible. How do you manage it all?
I have honestly the most amazing husband that stands by me these days and sticks through it all and has them at the moment out so that they're not creating chaos here for me. Like, honestly, that's probably my saving grace. And now learning some of the stuff that I teach is to find balance in life. And that's something that I really had to embody and had to really ground into, is finding that balance. So not always being on the pressure of having to be a mum. Like, one of the biggest realizations that I've had recently, and this is talking pure mum world, is that you can put down the mum hat. Like, if you had a job, you'd take off that hat when you get off from work and you go and do your own thing. You can do the same thing being a mum. And I had to learn that instead of keeping on judging myself and shaming myself into thinking that I wasn't good enough, because I was overcompensating for everything that I had in my childhood. I was trying to do everything different for my kids. So every time that I wasn't enough in my eyes, I'd be there judging myself more and pushing myself more, which is where I show up so often in everything, because I had to overcompensate and I had the bar so high. So now I've thrown that sort of away, and I'm just like, okay, yes, I can be here, but I can also be here, and I can be here at my space and at my pace in life rather than showing up for everybody else.
Yeah. And it's important that we take care of ourselves so that we can show up for others.
Yeah. That's probably one of the biggest things, is if we're not taking care of ourselves, especially when we've got kids, they don't know then how to take care of themselves because they're not getting role modeled it. One of the biggest things that from that piece is, it's not because I don't love my kids or want to spend time with them. No, it's because I want them to see what a healthy life is. And a healthy life does have balance. A healthy life will have times where you're not surrounded by the same people all the time, and where you get to say, no, enough is enough, and have boundaries and keep moving forward.
Yeah. I want to share with you that Kristen said, I love that you do that. And that's going back to when you said the type of work you did and that you followed Kristen in the presentation today. It is very true. You know, the inner child work is so important and something that, you know, many of us need to look at. Adaire has said, thank you for sharing, Carly. It takes courage to share these stories. And over on Facebook, it says, thank you for sharing your story, Carly. Incredibly powerful to be able to show that level of vulnerability and courage. It is especially impactful. Carly, can you tell everybody why it was that you chose to contribute to Hear Her Roar? Because it's one thing to see it as a child, and then to repeat that pattern. So I saw it as a child and didn't repeat that pattern, but I pushed a lot of people away and still do because of what I experienced as a child. You went on to repeat that pattern. Why did you share this story in Hear Her Roar?
I shared the story because I saw everything that I'd gone through and how long it took me to break that cycle. And if someone can read this and understand that they don't have to keep on repeating it, that's one of the most powerful things ever. And for me also, sharing the stories was actually a part of my own healing journey. To stop locking it down and pretending that it didn't happen. Like before I wrote in the book, some of the things that I'd repeated, the cycles I'd repeated, I'd never shared with anyone before because of the fear that I had. I had to really push myself to get to this point of I can share this and show that you're not vulnerable to share about it. And just because you're repeating it, it's okay. You can get help. You're not a bad person for repeating it. And I know for me, I had that story come up but I always said that I'd never been that thing because I'd been a child of it. I always, in my mind, I was like, no, I'll never go into that relationship. I'll never do this. And then I was doing it and I'm like, I can't tell anyone this at all because then I'm really bad. Like I told everyone that I wouldn't do this and here I am doing this. So how can I dare share this? Let's just pretend it didn't happen and I'll just move on past it.
Yeah, I think that's really important that people understand that, it's not your fault. And because you repeat the pattern doesn't mean that you're a bad person or you're not worthy of assistance and help to get out of it. It just means that your subconscious has taken over and is driving your life, and you need help for that to change. And reaching out to somebody is the most important thing. Our book, Hear Her Roar, is available on digital. You don't have to have a Kindle to read it. This is actually the book on my iPhone, just using the app, the Kindle app, or you can get the paperback, which I don't have with me today. But you can get the paperback over on Amazon. If you click on the Amazon Live TV, you will be able to purchase it straight away and download it while we are still here live. Carly, I dedicated the book to all women who have lost their lives to domestic abuse. And it's something that, we see far too frequently in the news, that people have lost their lives at the hands of somebody who is supposedly their lover. Can you tell me, when you see this, and this is for all women who have experienced domestic abuse, when you see this, what does that do for you and how do you cope with that?
It's funny you should ask this. I've recently had a friend pass because of DV in her home, and it actually became, I want to share something. Sometimes when you are the victim of DV, there's a piece of your brain that gets basically smashed apart, and you can reach that point of breaking where you become the abuser without even meaning to. You can become the abuser because of so much pain, so much emotional.
It's like you get to that point, there's a limit you get to, and it's something that you cannot cope with anymore, so you turn into the abuser, or you match their abuse.
That's it. And so from that point, like I said, I recently lost a friend who snapped. She completely snapped because of the abuse that she'd been taking for so many years. And when I see these, it still hurts my heart so much, whether it be in that circumstance or seeing the male or perpetrator being the one who creates the death and untimely trauma in itself. So it gets me shaky. It's still Like I haven't fully healed in a point where I can go, no, I'm clear of that. But
you never will be, though. So what steps can people take when this happens?
For me, what I see is starting to talk. If you've got a friend that you know you can trust, start talking to them. That's, for me, when I got into that triggered state, the first thing I did was get on my phone and actually text one of my best friends that knows my background, which a lot of people do. And to actually find the people, like if you have services in your area, please visit them. They will be the ones that can help the most. Reading these sort of stories and knowing you're not alone, knowing that there is help out there, and removing the stigma that it's bad or that you're the reason that's created this problem, because that's such a big mind issue, is that you start believing that you're the problem that caused it all to happen. So being willing to heal. I recently had a pretty big light bulb moment for myself, in that domestic violence and abuse, it happens because of unhealed souls on both sides. And to be able to help that, you need to find the bridge between the abuse or the victim and what's the point of, I'm trying to put this into words, what's the point of like their chaos? What is it that they aren't willing to lose in their lives? So how much pain is in their lives? Putting the bridge between the actions that they're doing and what is there to lose in your life that's that dramatic that if you don't heal from it, you won't be able to survive, basically. And that's where a lot of people get to leave domestic violence and abuse, is that point of, I'm going to die, or there's going to be something really bad. So finding the bridge of that is going to be something that creates a lot more healing, because like I know from personal experience, the people that are violent towards women or in that violent circumstance are the ones that are really unhealed souls themselves. And it's whether or not they're willing to admit it. So finding how they can accept that there's a problem is a big key to creating more. And that doesn't, like, I struggled with this when I thought about it, because it comes down to the women so much. Well, they've got to learn how to help this man, because if they can help, then he'll be healed. No, it's about them understanding it for themselves. So for the women, understanding that you aren't the solution. You aren't the problem and you aren't the solution. The only solution you are to is for yourself to find your own healing. And that means a lot of the time leaving. That means a lot of the time finding your own space in this world, rather than continuing to try to manage and micromanage this space. Yes.
That is so true. You cannot heal somebody else.
No. And that's a hard thing to accept in itself.
Yeah.
A lot of the point of this is acceptance in itself, accepting that you aren't to blame, you aren't the problem, but you can be the solution for yourself, and they have to be the solution for themselves.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I love how you talked about the bridge between the two souls in particular, because it is true that you attract what it is that you desire to fix in your life. And sometimes it takes many, many times for that lesson to be learned, unfortunately. And I don't want anybody to judge themselves and think that they're lesser of a person because they have repeated the pattern, and that they need, they need to stay because, or whether they think they're stupid, or whether they think they're not worth anything better, or whether they think they deserve it. It's not true. And you can reach out for help to any of the women in the book, Carly J, myself, Kristen, who we had today, and we will, either direct you in the right place or help you through this across the miles. Carly, thank you for the work that you do. We will put the links in how people can contact you, but is there anything else that you would like to share before you go?
One of the biggest messages I put in, because I know that a lot of women that are in DV are also mothers, is don't stay for the children. Because,
oh gosh, yes.
Like, as a child who witnessed it, I had so many days where I just wished that we could pack up and leave. And I had so many moments where Dad would go, well, get out, and Mum would beg to come back. And I just wished that she wouldn't, because that was what was sticking us there. So when I say don't stay for the children, again, don't feel judgment, don't feel shame that you are. Just know that the child there would be begging you to as well, like in their own confused way. They want happiness, they want peace, and they want love. And when they can see this happening, they know that something's not right, and a lot of the time they'll blame themselves.
I want to share something with you that is what I lived with for many years, was blaming myself. So I think I was 9 years old, and they used to call me the midnight train because I would always get up at midnight to go to the toilet. And I know now that it was my intuition telling me to get up and go check on my mum. At the time, I didn't know that's what it was. It was just I used to get up and go to the toilet, and I had to walk through the lounge room where often a lot of the abuse happened in our house. And I'd become my mum's protector. And I walked out. Our toilet is actually attached to the house, but it's outside. You have to walk to the outside door and go through another door to get into it. So they're directly opposite each other, but it's outside. And on the side porch next to the toilet was my dad's bags packed. And I went back inside and begged him not to leave.
Yeah.
I mean, still to this day, I feel guilty about that, even though I've done so much work on it. And if he had have gone, then how much better would those next 8 years have been, and how much better would our lives have been, and how much richer could we have been as little humans? I don't know, but it's something that, don't stay for the children. And if the child begs the parent to leave, you have to tell them what's going on. You have to explain that that's, what daddy does, or if it's mummy, most often it's the man is the perpetrator. You have to tell them that it's not okay what's happening, and that he needs to go. Because I didn't get that, and it wasn't until years later that I realised that he stayed all that time because I asked him to. And it's not what I wanted, really.
I share similar moments when I was really young, like before I hit my teenage years, where Dad would threaten to leave before he'd be trying to push us out, where I'd be going, no, Daddy, stay, because I just wanted a happy family. And I thought that a happy family meant that Mum and Dad were still together, and that everything was just, peachy keen that way. And in reality, if I hadn't have done that, maybe things would have been different. They could have moved on in their own way, and things could have been better.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Carly, for being here. These stories are so hard to talk about, as you can tell. I cry nearly every single week when I do these ones. I appreciate you sharing your story along with the other women in the book. And I do implore everybody to grab a copy of this book. If you don't feel compelled to read it yourself, buy it and give it to your local DV shelter. There is one in every single town in Australia, which I think is awful to think that we need to have them, but we do. And if a woman could read one story from that and it helps her to leave one time sooner than she would have, maybe we've saved a life, and maybe we've changed their life for the better. Thank you so much for being with me, Carly. I really appreciate it. I'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks everybody for being with us again. As I said, talking about domestic abuse, domestic violence is a really hard topic. Please do seek the help that you need if you are experiencing it. And if you've been through it and you're still feeling the trauma, reach out to one of the authors in the book, and they will either direct you in the right place or share with you how they can help you. Thanks so much, Adaire, for producing the show again today. It is such an honour to be able to share authors in the spotlight with everybody through this platform. And I shall see you again next week. Bye for now. Thank you.